All right, good morning. So I'm just going to give a minute, make sure everybody that wants to be here and attend today, they are here. Just want to make sure everyone can hear me. Okay, awesome. All right, this is a very new platform for me. So hopefully it goes all right today. But if there's any questions, you can always text in the chat. So today I'm going to be talking about self-compassion, and I have Caitlin with us today. And Caitlin's going to be doing a little bit later a loving kindness meditation. So today is going to be about learning a bit more about self-compassion, but I'm also wanting to do a few exercises. And anyone that has any questions, again, just feel free to raise your hand or put in the chat. So there should be a little bit of you should see on the right hand, the private chat space. All right, a little bit about me. So I've been a therapist for about 15 years. I have 2 mental health practices and a new podcast coming out called Wisconsin Wellness, and really excited about that. That should be coming out in a couple weeks. I have also taught courses at Lakeland University, and I am married. Been married for 15 years, actually. We just had our anniversary. I got 4 kids, 12, 9, and twins that are 7, and a dog that you might hear actually at some point during this webinar. He still has a bit of a barking issue when the Amazon guy comes. All right. So let's move on to what is self-compassion. So self-compassion is the practice of being kind to yourself in difficult times. It's about recognizing our common humanity. It's honoring our struggles and treating ourselves with kindness. So this piece, I think, is really important to just pause and take in, that it is about acknowledging the fact that we are all human and we are not perfect. This is something I often struggle with. I mean, I know I'm not perfect, don't get me wrong, but there is sometimes a tendency to want to make things perfect, or think and believe that I need to be perfect to be loved. That's one of the most common things I hear as a therapist. And so, just kind of thinking about, what are your beliefs about being human? Do you circle back to that? Do you believe you're above that, right? So sometimes there is something that goes on inside of us that says, well, I understand everybody else is human, but I'm supposed to be perfect. And if we pause and just, become aware of some of those thoughts, we can see how that doesn't really add up. So what would make us different? What would make us have a different set of rules and expectations than somebody else? The next one is honoring our struggles. So, as a mental health therapist, that's what I work with people on all day, every day, is what are their struggles? And I can sit there in a room with somebody and 100% be able to honor that. And maybe you in your life can do the same thing when a friend is coming to you and saying, I'm really struggling with my marriage right now, or work is so difficult, or I'm having trouble remembering appointments. That's the one that comes up for me. Things like that, it'll come up for other people. They will share it with us. And for the most part, we do honor that. We can say, I totally understand how that would be possible. You have a lot going on, or, if it's regarding our relationship, I could see how you would feel like that. I would feel that way too. And you deserve to be heard and you deserve to be respected. And it's okay. And you're not making something out of nothing. So that is another thing that comes up for a lot of people, is the idea that we are exaggerating our struggles. Comes up really frequently. Last one is treating ourselves with kindness. So this is a constant in my house. Can you be kind? Can you be kind? Can you be kind? And so it takes practice for kids to be able to do that towards each other, but it takes practice for us to do it towards ourselves. As we get older, we have a ton of practice being kind to other people. We might not be doing 100%, on the kindness front, but for the most part, we are going to be kind, unless there's like a real conflict or something that really crosses our boundaries. For the most part, we're going to be kind to each other. Being kind to ourselves, though, that's where it takes practice. So I want you to think about that, as far as kids need practice at being kind to others and sometimes themselves, but we as adults tend to need to practice being kind to ourselves and not others. So it is just a switch. It is just that at this stage in our life, there's going to be more of a tendency for us to be critical on ourselves and expecting ourselves to be something that might not even be possible, at least not possible at this time or this moment in time. Just a quick example of that would be a mom that's has a newborn. This comes up again pretty frequently, where there is that expectation that I should be at this point taking care of my baby, not sleeping, but yet making amazing meals, being there for my husband or wife, being there for my partner, being there for friends and family, and entertaining and doing all of these things, and go back to work. Maybe sooner than the 3 months. Maybe that expectation is that at 3 months you're going to be ready to go back to work, when the reality is 90% of women I talk to aren't ready at 3 months, and it's really hard. But that idea, we can see when we're looking at that situation that's not really realistic to be all of those things at once during that time. It's not a time for all of those things, but yet at the same time, we feel that expectation from other people, and we feel that expectation on ourselves, for ourselves. So recognizing that part as well is going to be really important as far as the self-compassion goes. The other part is self-compassion can help us accept our imperfections, cope with those painful emotions, motivate ourselves to make positive changes, and relate more authentically to ourselves and those around us. And it also can help with creating a balance in our life. Feel free if you have questions. Again, you can always ask. I will pause again in a bit to check and see if anyone has questions. All right, we're going to move on to the understanding self-compassion a bit more. As I was mentioning, it tends to be the opposite of that tends to be that self-critical voice and judgment. So most of us have that. And really what we're going to be doing is changing it from the self-criticism to the self-kindness. And, as we're doing that, I just want you to really just notice, and I think I say this a little bit later on actually in my slides, but the self-criticism that we are experiencing is very human, and it is part of our makeup as humans. So it is something that, again, would be very rare for me not to hear a client come into my office, a friend or family member that's talking with me, to say, I don't have any self-critical thoughts. Now, I will say um, being in this being in this field for a very long time, I am really excited to say that I don't have a ton of the self criticism, just because I've been practicing it. When it comes up, though, because it still does come up, I do use the self compassion and kindness in order to move through it. I don't dismiss it and say, "Oh, that's wrong," um, because that's not really accurate. What I tend to do is say, "Okay, what do I have to really look at here? What is something I can improve? How can I look at this in a concrete way?" And then go into the loving kindness practice. Because usually, if there's a critical part coming up, it is trying to tell me something. All right, so these two words often get confused and used in place of each other, and it's not really that big of a deal to interchange them, but I do want to separate the difference between the two terms. So self-compassion is different from self-esteem. Self-esteem comes from the external validation, and it comes usually with comparison. So how do I fit in with the people around me? Where do I rank? So self-esteem is really how we see ourselves and how we value ourselves. Self-compassion, on the other hand, is based on self-acceptance and understanding. It's not dependent at all on the external validation. It's not dependent on achievement. And we can talk about achievement being kind of an issue with self-esteem, but it has to do really with how we are treating ourselves. So think about self-compassion as a way to relate to ourselves and not how we're viewing ourselves. So that's what I would say would be the biggest distinction, is that acknowledging the fact that we are going to be imperfect. Caitlin, I did get that message about you being muted. I'm going to set you as a moderator. And so I don't know what that does. Again, really new, a new webinar platform, but you can let me know if you're able to unmute when you need to, which will be in a little bit anyways, but I just wanted to make sure I let you know. All right, so let's move on. This piece, going back into the self-esteem, I want to highlight this because it is extremely important to acknowledge where self-esteem can go awry and what we tend to use for self-esteem. Now, it's a bit of an offshoot because we are really talking about self-compassion. However, I want to include this because we tend to go into that space of valuing ourselves as part of the practice. And I do want to differentiate this piece of the different kinds that are unhealthy. So when we're looking at the types of self-esteem, we're looking at achievement-based conditional self-esteem. What that means is that individuals will often feel like they are deserving, feel like they are worthy, feel like they are deserving of love and kindness and compassion when they are achieving. And this it tends to be more males that experience this, but I see it in all different people. It's not really fully a male identity part, but I do tend to see it more when I'm working with men that, for instance, if they lose a job, then their self-esteem goes down. And what goes with that tends to be a decrease in self-compassion. As a therapist, my job is to show compassion towards my client that's coming in with the hopes of them being able to do it internally after they've been seeing me for a while. Best thing in the world is when a client says, "I can hear your voice. my thick Wisconsin voice, um, in their minds when they are having some negative thoughts about themselves. So, but the achievement-based self-esteem, just to go over that one last time, is based on the belief that we have to earn self-esteem, and we have to earn respect, and we have to earn uh, dignity. But that's not true. Everybody deserves it. And again, we're able to see that usually when we're looking at other people, harder when we're looking towards ourselves. Appearance-based conditional self-esteem. So this, obviously, we were noticing this a lot more when it comes to social media, because we are just becoming more and more focused on appearance, and it is a real issue. I do see this in my office as well. We might be experiencing that more internally as well. Tends to be more women, but again, number one, that's changing. It tends to be occurring more in younger individuals, and tends to shift. We tend to shift out of that a bit as we reach an age like myself, 43. So we tend to switch that a bit, but that can still be something that we value ourselves on. Of, am I attractive? Am I desirable? And can I get validation because of that? Social approval, meaning that it's based on what people around us say. Now, this is really also important to just point out that this is evolutionary as well. All of this it's status, and we really have to think about that part of it as being real and a part of our culture and a part of our lives. That the social approval usually being one of the highest ones, because of the reality that we need each other in order to survive. But the social approval can be something where we might be in a conflict with a friend or family member and think to ourselves, I'm not worthy. I don't deserve to have friends. I don't deserve to have that friendship. Can happen with a relationship. If there is a breakup, then I don't deserve to be loved. That one I hear so often. It does break my heart when I hear an individual feeling that way because of a relationship ending. And it takes some time to move through that, for sure. But love doesn't really work that way, because one person chooses not to be with you or chooses to not love you anymore. It doesn't make you unlovable, but it's also really understandable that that's the feeling that would come up. So any thoughts, anything anyone wants to share on this topic with the self-esteem portion? All right, we can move on. So why do self-esteem practices? What's the point of it? Many benefits. And Caitlin, too, if you want to jump in, you can always share as well. No pressure on that, but you're totally welcome to. But the benefits are so, there's so many benefits, because the reality is that this can impact almost every single part of your day-to-day living. We'll have an improved sense of mental health, increased resilience. So when something goes wrong, we will be able to move through it easier. We tend to have better relationships, and our relationship with ourselves and with others tend to improve. So if we are practicing talking to ourselves in a gentle way, we will tend to do that more frequently with the people we love. And if we're giving ourselves grace and giving ourselves compassion, we tend to do that more for the people in our lives that might be making mistakes as well. So it can help reduce anxiety and depression, increase feelings of self-worth and self-acceptance. Self-compassion also helps to reduce feelings of shame. Anyone that's been a fan of Brené Brown knows a lot about shame and how that keeps us very much isolated and on our own and feeling separate from other people, which can be extremely hard on our self-esteem, our mind, and our body. So thinking about those all decreasing the more that you're practicing self-compassion hopefully increases the desire to be more self-compassionate towards ourselves. So I don't want to repeat everything that we said, but it's basically a way to understand how we as humans relate to our experience. It's treating ourselves with kindness and the courage to accept and acknowledge our imperfections. Forgive ourselves, to accept that we're going to have weaknesses and things that we might not be good at, and saying that that's okay. I know that I can't be perfect. I know that I'm going to make mistakes. The whole process of being a person in this world is to make mistakes and learn from it. That seems to be the main task that everybody is experiencing together. Okay. So our first exercise is to pause and take a moment and see where you fall in our self-compassion. So I'm going to go through 10 questions. And if you have the opportunity to write yes or no down, go for it. If not, you can just mentally count which ones you're saying yes to. And this is just to give you a perspective on yourself, on how you are treating yourself, and if you have a high level of self-compassion or not. All right. So I'm glad I put my glasses on. So how do you typically respond to your own mistakes and failures? So I want you to just think about that. That's not a yes or no, but just think about how you typically respond to your mistakes or failures. Are you judgmental? Do you ruminate? Are you able to let it go? Are you able to treat yourself with kindness and understanding during challenging times? Do you find it easy or difficult to forgive yourself for past actions or decisions? What language do you use when speaking to yourself during moments of difficulty or stress? That one is one I hear quite often, of how the actual words we're saying to ourselves can be really hurtful and harmful. Are you able to recognize and accept your own limitations and imperfections without judgment? How often do you prioritize your own your own well-being and self-care in your daily life? Do you tend to compare yourself to others, leading to feelings of inadequacy or self-criticism? So that goes back to the self-esteem piece. Usually with the self-esteem, we are doing comparisons. Are you able to set healthy boundaries and say no when necessary without feeling guilty? That's a hard one. Do you handle moments of emotional pain or suffering, both big and small? So how do you handle those? What do you do when you're feeling that emotional pain? Do you give yourself credit for your accomplishments and success, no matter how small they may seem? That last one comes up a lot in my sessions, where if we're doing some goals where someone's struggling with doing some smaller things, they might say to me like, well, I should be doing this. So why would I say, good job on that? And the reality is that we have to meet ourselves where we are. And sometimes doing those smaller things is how, almost all the time actually, doing the smaller things is how we get to the bigger things. But if we're not saying to ourselves, nice job, if we're not saying to ourselves, hey, look at you, you did it, then there's not really a ton of actual motivation to keep it going and continuing. This is maybe silly, but it goes along the lines of what we're talking about today. I have to now get up way earlier than I want to, because my son has to get up for middle school 2 hours earlier than I'm used to. And so I tend to forget to make myself coffee the night before and press that button. What I do now is I will thank myself every time I remember as I'm making the coffee. It feels lame and the kids kind of ask me what I'm up to, but I will do it out loud. I'll say, thanks, Mom. Thanks for making coffee for yourself. And it does seem a little silly, but it really helps me acknowledge that it's a really small thing, but a really big deal for me. In the morning, if I wake up and I smell that coffee, that's a gift to myself. And it's pretty incredible. Like, oh, I can just walk directly to my coffee and get my coffee. So doing the thankfulness piece to myself is really, because I know it's not for anyone else. It's really for me, and it is taking care of myself. And I thank other people for doing things for me. Why not thank myself? So think about those times when you do it. So if anyone wants to share that, definitely feel free to share when they're doing that. And if anyone wants to share what they noticed when they went through these questions, feel free to do that as well.
I have a little something to add.
Here, let me see if I might have to unmute you.
Can you hear me now?
Let's see. Bear with me. Oh, it's interesting because it's showing that you are off mute.
Yeah, it should be unmuted.
I wonder if it's this.
Can you hear me now?
Now try saying something.
Okay, can you hear me?
No, it's not that. Can everyone else hear, Caitlin?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? I'm switching the microphone. No? Can anyone hear me now?
Okay. I got to use some compassion towards the computer right now. Okay, I'm going to try this.
Is it working now? No? It says I'm unmuted.
Can anyone raise their hand and say if they can hear Caitlin? Or message?
Oh.
Okay, well, I'm trying that. This is odd because I don't know if it's me. All right, Caitlin, can you say something?
Yeah, hi. Can you hear me? Not working?
Can you try again?
Yeah, can you hear me?
I got it.
You get
I
it?
got it. So maybe everybody could hear you, but it was my issue. All
I'm
right.
not sure. I forgot. Oh yeah, what I was gonna say is
Yeah.
back to like the questions that you had, and like you said, Laura, like since we've been in this field and practicing self-compassion for ourselves for a while, it gets easier. And I think that was really interesting for me reflecting on those questions is, you know, a couple years ago, those might have been very different answers for me.
Mhm.
And in my own therapy, I remember my therapist saying, you know, we need to work on self-compassion. And, you know, several years ago, I was like, what is that? How do I do that? And so I just want to kind of like be encouraging that it does get better, it does change, even if some of those answers to that activity were like, oh, I am kind of beating myself
Mhm.
up. Like, how do I get better at this? It's just a practice, a constant practice. And so that was what came up for me with those
Yeah.
questions. Is like, wow, I feel like I've come really far. And so I just hope that that can be encouraging to people that this is something that it's a skill and you can get better at it.
Yeah, I love that because it is true. It is a skill, and um, it is kind of a cool thing when you look back and think, okay, I used to do this, I used to do that.
Yeah.
Um, I definitely used to use labels is one that I would say to myself with when I would make a mistake, and I can't remember the last time I've done that, and it's not because I haven't made any mistakes,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
but just recognizing, oh, that makes me feel really bad, and
Mhm.
it's not giving me any information.
Yeah.
So what, maybe choose something else. So yeah, that is really encouraging. And I'm glad we got the sound to work.
Yeah.
All right. So why is self-compassion so difficult? Um, this, I guess we kind of have touched a bit on that, but there are a lot of reasons why it's so difficult. So there is the cultural and societal conditioning, and that means that especially in the United States, we emphasize being tough, independent, self-reliant, and this can give us a negative feeling if we do need help with something, or if there's a sign of weakness. And when I say weakness, I want to be really clear. It means, when I say weakness, it means that there's something we're not really good at. So it doesn't mean like weak as I'm a weak person. It means that, hey, if this is something that's not a strength, it's more in that weakness category, that there's something wrong with me, or that I don't deserve compassion and self-compassion. So the other one is that inner critic and self-judgment. Now, we all have this, right? That self-judgment and critical part of us. And again, it'll come up more for others, that some than others, and it can come up during different times. Um, you might want to pay attention to when that is coming up, because that can indicate spots of growth and spots that we might want to improve on. So the inner critic that we have didn't just show up. It came from our parents, our educators, our um, family, aunts and uncles, anyone that was trying to help us fit into our society. It is not necessary. This isn't to blame any parent for anything, or any educator for anything. It is a part of how we develop. However, what tends to happen is a parent might say, oh my gosh, you spilled all over. And yeah, you could say that, and that might be it. But we would feel criticized about that to a degree. And then the parent might say, oh my God, what's wrong with you? You spilled again. What's going on? Why can't you just sit down? Right. So, with that second part becomes a higher critical voice. And we tend to then internalize that critical voice. And the reason we internalize that is to prevent outside criticism from occurring. So I want you to think about the actual reason we have that voice is to protect us. So we might feel negative about our critical voice, but it really serves a purpose, and it did serve a purpose. It's to protect us and to learn. Not the way that maybe we would like to be learning, but that is how a lot of times we end up learning. So the other thing is the feeling of self-indulgence might come up. So if we're talking about self-compassion, this tends to be more women. But again, it varies. But it might feel like it's really selfish to take care of ourselves and to be kind to ourselves. And we might just feel like understanding's for other people, not myself. So recognizing that it is not selfish, that if we are doing that for other people, we need to recognize that we're equal to other people. Everybody deserves kindness. Everybody. So remind yourself that part, that we have to put ourselves as equal to other people. Not better than, not less than, but equal. So the other part is, or another one is invalidation. So this goes into a lot of times childhood, could be relationships, but that we have this perfectionistic tendencies and we might have unrealistic expectations. Like, you need to be this, you need to be performing like this in order to have the self-compassion. Fear of failure is another thing that will maybe stop somebody from fear of failure may stop someone from trying to use self-compassion, because there is a fear that if we are kind and gentle to ourselves, we won't perform. So I hear that really quite often. And so it is a really scary thing to practice. What I suggest with that is practice small and see how it goes. If it's, I'm going to be nice to myself, like I'll use myself. I'll be nice to myself after this presentation, and I can say kind things to myself afterwards. And so, yes, I could feel like if I'm not critiquing myself, I'm not going to get better at doing presentations. And, the fear of failure would be that the next presentation really sucks and nobody likes it. And that fear is real and it makes a ton of sense. But if I practice using kindness and I have another presentation tomorrow, I can test that out right away. Like, is the next one worse because I'm kind to myself? Usually we're going to find that it's not true, and that it actually makes things easier and makes performing easier and tasks easier. All right, so we have the misconceptions, and then we are at probably time then at that point to do a few other exercises. But 5 misconceptions of self-compassion might be a little bit of a recap, but one that I just want to point out is actually the self-pity piece. So that one, we don't have to go over the other ones because we did that already, but the self-pity is something we really do need to distinguish. Self-pity is really centered on feeling bad for ourselves, feeling like deep sorrow for the situation we're in. It's not necessarily a negative thing, but it isn't self-compassion. It is in that realm of, I'm feeling really bad that I lost my job and I'm going to sit in that for a while. Again, I'm not saying that that's a negative thing, but self-compassion doesn't mean that we need to be sitting in that feeling. Self-compassion means I lost my job and I'm in a tough situation and I need X, Y, and Z. I need to be kind to myself. I need to say some nice things to myself. And this goes into an exercise that you can do also, which is writing a letter to yourself. or it could be a text. That's what's nice about having a phone is we can do this task pretty easily now. You can text yourself or make yourself a note saying some things that you would want to hear, or that you would want to hear, I guess, from a friend if we were going through a difficult time. Or what tends to make self-compassion easier is to think, if my friend was going through this, what would I say to my friend? And then take note of what those words would be. So anyone have any ideas on what you might say to a friend that lost their job or had something difficult happening? And I'll give a moment, otherwise I can offer my thoughts. Okay, so some things you might say to a friend that lost their job is, you are intelligent, you are smart, you are capable, you have had a job for X amount of years, you will find a job again. You are skilled in X, Y, and Z. Could be you are skilled in writing, you are skilled in communication, you are skilled in an interview process. You got this. I trust that you can do this. Any of those things you could use. So making a list for yourself can be a really useful tool to come back to. Pick a time when you're feeling pretty good and write it then. And it'll help to use a friend. All right. Judgmental mind. I went through this already, so I'm not going to go through it again. I'd rather us go into our exercises because I want us to actually be practicing the self-compassion. So Caitlin, whenever you're ready to do the loving kindness meditation, we can have you start. And if you're not ready right now, I can go on to the other one.
No, I'm ready.
Awesome.
As long as, you can hear and see me. I guess you don't have to see me, but as the sound is working, we can start. Yeah, so I just want to do a quick loving kindness meditation, which it sounds very, kind of soft, but it's a really good way to start practicing this self-compassion. And Laurie, something that you started with was kind of like, why do we practice self-compassion? And something that came up for me when you said that is, I noticed with clients is like, oftentimes they're making their situations like a little bit harder than it has to be by beating themselves up on top of what they're already experiencing.
Mm-hmm.
And so if they were, let's say, at a 10 out of 10 situation, they could maybe bring it down to a 9 if they were just more gentle with themselves. And so it's just one of the reasons why it's important to practice. This meditation is kind of visual. We'll do some visualization and we can just kind of begin. So if you want to start just getting comfortable, whether that's a seated position or a lying down position, making sure that you don't have any physical distractions. That might mean, maybe you have some pain somewhere. You can just adjust so that you're comfortable. Just starting to notice your feet on the floor, maybe your hands on your lap, just getting kind of in a comfortable seated position. You can start to close your eyes if you feel comfortable doing that. And we'll set the intention for this meditation to just be kind to ourselves and to increase self-compassion. You can start to just connect to your breathing wherever your breaths are at today. They might be shallow or deep. Not judging how you're breathing, but just noticing the breath. Noticing the sensation of breathing, the air filling your lungs and your belly, maybe some rising and falling. And if at any time during this meditation you find yourself distracted or caught up in some thoughts, you can always come back to your breath, just remembering the sensation of breathing and focusing on that. And now you can start to imagine a white light kind of emanating from the center of your body. Maybe it's in your chest or your stomach. And this is a warm white light. The light kind of symbolizes love, compassion, kindness. Start to imagine that light filling up your whole body, expanding and touching every aspect of your body from your head to your toes. Really filling you up with that warmth. And now you can imagine the light expanding to the room that you're in, filling the whole room with the light and the warmth. Now imagining the light touching your entire building or your home and everyone in it. Now imagine the light expanding further to encompass your entire town or city, all of the people around you, all the people who live in the town and the city that you're in. Imagining the light expanding further to encompass your whole state. And then your entire country. Now imagine the light that's still starting from inside of you, emanating to encompass the entire world. Let's come back to noticing your breath. Maybe taking in a deep breath in through your nostrils, out through your mouth. Kind of start to move around, wiggle your toes and your fingers. And then you can flutter the eyes open when you feel ready. You're coming back to the space that you're in.
All right. Thank you. That was wonderful. I haven't done one like that before where it was the white light and the visualization of each part. And I could see that being really useful for individuals that are struggling with some of the things going on in our city, our state, our world, and feeling very much, in that space of helplessness of I can't do anything. But this is at least putting it out there that we're hoping for that compassion to go to everyone.
Mhm.
You know?
Yep. Yep. And it starts with being compassionate to ourselves.
Yeah.
That's how we can give it. So
Yeah, I love it. All right. So we have a little bit more time, and I do have another technique that I just want you to think about using when you are in like an emotional distress. So anytime that this pops up for you, you can come back to this, and I will email you this information as well. And there's also going to be a small workbook that's coming out shortly. But this self-compassion break, use it when there's moments of self-criticism. And what you do with that, you can close your eyes if you'd like when you do this practice. You can keep your eyes open. But really what you want to do is focus in on the feeling that's coming from this distress. Find and locate it in your body. So that is the first step. So, a lot of times we might find it in our chest, we might find it in our head, we might find it in our stomach. But the first step here is to pay attention to where it's located. Then I'm going to have you remind yourself that suffering is a part of being human. And you're not alone in that feeling. And when you're zeroing in and bringing your awareness to that feeling, you might notice that feeling is moving. You might notice that feeling's dissipating. But just notice it. You don't have to do anything with it. Again, it is part about being human. What you might find is that it does dissipate or it does move. Then I'm going to have you offer words of kindness to yourself. May I be kind to myself in this moment of difficulty. I am loved. And I care about myself. Now I'm going to have you place your hand over your heart or any place that feels comfortable and nurturing. So you want both of those things. And I'm going to have you breathe deeply and allow the warmth of self-compassion to envelop you. Another thing that you might find to be useful and can feel also a bit silly, but giving yourself a hug. Again, this can seem silly, but what actually tends to happen is our body doesn't really know the difference between someone else hugging us or ourselves. Now, there's certain things that obviously tickling and things like that, it needs to be somebody else because otherwise it doesn't tickle. But with hugs, you're really just feeling the pressure, and that relaxes our body and delivers positive chemicals for relaxation. So if you do that for 20 seconds or you ask for a hug from a friend or family member, try to make it 20 seconds if you can, because that's when all of the good chemicals come out. So again, trying to allow yourself to think and pause. I'm feeling this way and it's okay. And it's part of being human. And what do I need? What would help? So that's the second piece of compassion that is important, that there is the internal softer piece of self-compassion, but then there is the actual action that can come with it. So an act of self-compassion would be a hug. It would be kind words. It would be making yourself tea. It could be going on a walk. For myself, I light candles when I do yoga, and it feels like I'm really taking care of myself. I love them. I love candles, and it really does. Like it's part of what makes me feel like I'm important. All right, so our time is coming to an end. And I want to thank everybody for attending today. And I'm going to open it up to any questions, if anyone has any questions that they might want to ask. And you can always, again, put it in the chat. And I hope that you all enjoyed it, and I will see you again. Again, there's one tomorrow on the Enneagram, which is a personality assessment, which is extremely useful when we're wanting to get to know ourselves as well. So I hope to see you there. And it would mean so much to me if you enjoyed this time together to write a review. And I will send out that link today. But I would really appreciate it. And we're going to be doing a giveaway at the end of the month for an Amazon gift card, $100 Amazon gift card. And we'll enter every single person that has given a review just as a thank you, and make it kind of fun, because I know that is probably the last thing everybody has in mind to do is write a review. But I would really appreciate it. And again, thank you for attending. And feel free to email me or Caitlin if you have any questions, or if you want to chat about anything. All right, thanks, Caitlin. Thanks, everyone. Bye.